Today on Locked On Phoenix Suns, we've had 72 hours or so to sit with this Brian Gregory hire as GM of the Suns. And let's just say the reaction across the league has maybe been even worse than ours. Is it right or wrong? What does it mean for the two stars of this team? And everything else to come this offseason. Next.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Phoenix Suns. I'm Brendon Kleen, a staff writer at Awful Announcing and a credentialed Suns media member. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen to kick off your week. Happy Monday. Don't forget, Locked On Suns is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, so click that follow or subscribe button. Do what thousands of other Suns fans have already done. Become an everydayer and get locked on to the Phoenix Suns each and every day. Joining me, as always. Well, actually, let's talk about Monarch Money first, folks. Sorry about that. Take control of your finances right now with Monarch Money. They are the sponsor of today's, well, I want to say wonderful episode. I can't promise that. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at Monarch Money for 50% off your first year. We got a lot to dig into. Joining me, as always, from the Wild West Valley to do exactly that, my fellow Suns credentialed media member. How are we doing, Ben Garcia?
I'm good. I agree with you. I don't know about a wonderful episode.
I mean, we're going to do a good job, but I can't promise it's going to make everybody happy.
Exactly. Wife made these cool stickers, so we see people be able to hand them out at some point. Granted, season ended, so not great on timeliness, but it's not all bad.
From now, we can give those out.
But I mean, sometimes I see people. I'll keep a couple in my bag. I'm not gonna, make it a priority. But like, not all bad, right? Some new, not really merch.
I'll be at some Mercury games. So once I can give people a heads up that I'll be at some of those, then maybe you can track me down. But we got a lot to dig into with this with this Brian Gregory hire. So let's dive right in, Ben. The reaction around the NBA, I think I was wondering what it would be because, frankly, I would imagine a lot of people don't know who Brian Gregory is. That's true locally, and he worked here. But I figured it's also going to be true nationally, so I was a little bit, maybe the Suns get the benefit of the doubt. Maybe because it's such a relatively anonymous hire, there wasn't going to be much of a reaction. It would just kind of blow over quietly and no one would really cover it. That's not really what happened. Let's start with what I think is the most damning couple of reactions that tell us this is going over worse among national insider types, even than it might be going over with you and I or Suns fans around the Valley. This is from John Hollinger, who, of course, has covered the NBA for a long time. I'm sure people know that name. He also, of course, was the lead executive in Memphis for many years and still has a lot of the context that he had during his time actually running a team. And here's what he had to say.
Texting with people in Atlanta like, wait, is this that Brian Gregory? Like the guy who was at Georgia Tech 15 years ago? Like his biggest qualification for the job was that a quarter century ago, he was an assistant coach on the team that Mat Ishbia played on at Michigan State. Apparently very close with Tom Izzo. And just basically, it sets us up for Mat Ishbia to be the GM.
That's even going further than I feel like you and I were ready to go on Friday, Ben. What did you think hearing a plugged-in guy like that be so direct that this is Ishbia hiring himself more than even whoever Brian Gregory might be?
Well, one of the ways that I try to go about things, I try to be very honest about like reactions, things like if I don't know something, I'll tell you I don't know. And so it makes me feel a little bit better that I had no idea who Brian Gregory was prior to 1 p.m. on Wednesday when this first got broken. It made me feel better about that, but it made me feel insanely worse that John Hollinger didn't know who that guy was. Like, or that he had to do a double take and be like, that Brian Gregory? You and I think, kind of danced around the Mat Ishbia as the GM now because we're not exactly sure. We were trying to give the guy a little bit of the benefit of the doubt while also examining his resume. But those are damning words, man. That like it almost makes me feel worse for pulling my punches a little bit because I wanted to give the guy a little bit of a little bit of a leeway to kind of do what he has to do.
Yeah.
But it just makes me feel less trusted to the Suns front office that they're going to make the right moves this offseason in what is some pretty big moves that they have to make. So that's my reaction to it.
To me, it was like the Suns want us to believe that they are hiring Gregory because of his leadership ability, which we'll get to at the end of the show a little bit more, and because of his player development and eye for talent that they're showcasing based on the fact that he was apparently a leading guy in the scouting and selection of Ryan Dunn and Oso Ighodaro. If that was true fully, I'm not saying it's a lie, but if that was a real thing that Gregory could hang his hat on as a candidate and that he has that reputation, I would think somebody like Hollinger and some of the other people we're going to reference here throughout this segment would know it, would be backing that up, right? Because word gets out, Dunn was a pretty good pick, all things considered, late first round. His offensive game seems to be way ahead of schedule. That's a good pick. If it was obvious that Gregory had kind of done that, I think other people would know it. The other thing to remember is Hollinger is based in Atlanta. So when he's talking about Georgia Tech, he knows that program. He's actually talking to people around there. And so that's part of what that was. Similar, very close to the situation type of reaction that I wanted to throw up. It's just a screenshot of a tweet from Dan Wolkin. Sorry, I get those two guys mixed up constantly. From USA Today. He wrote on Twitter, for people that are on the audio or whatever, it's absolutely wild that the guy who got fired at Georgia Tech in South Florida and never worked in the NBA just pops up and is now the GM of the Phoenix Suns. My mind is truly blown. Dan Wolkin has covered college sports forever. He is saying this was an irrelevant college sports figure who is now running a very prominent NBA team who still wants to have championship aspirations in the near future. And he's saying his mind is blown, Ben.
Well, that's basically what you and I said a couple of days ago, especially when we had heard about this hire. And I know for sure one of the things that I said was, are you kidding me? His last stint was in South Florida. And I can't remember who it was that told me, but someone was like, well, 300 wins is an awesome accomplishment. I couldn't care less about your wins against McDonald's University and Panera Bread State. Like, that's where I land on that. And it's so asinine. It leads to Hollinger's point.
It's also just not an accomplishment.
No,
if we're being honest.
No,
I don't like
the
it's an accomplishment
person,
versus
yes.
anything I've ever done as a coach
Exactly.
of a basketball team. But it doesn't. That's just a longevity stat. The dude was a losing coach the majority of seasons that he had a job, and
530 winning percentage.
Worked at programs where if you were really awesome, you should be able to be over 500 because he was in cellar-dwelling types of mid-major programs. He was not exactly in the ACC at, NC State every year or whatever, where you could say, the conference is hard. And frankly, even NC State's over 500 every season. So, I'm not giving him that credit.
Well, it's also like, it's not like it's Brad Stevens, right? Head coach of Butler, went to a couple Final Fours, went to a couple national championships, went to the Celtics, went to a couple Eastern Conference Finals, a finals appearance, and then ultimately goes to the front office. It's not the fact that we're like, why is a coach doing this? It's he literally, his resume stacked up against like almost any just Joe Blow in the NBA, he would lose the resume argument. So
they could hire Nate Oates to be their GM, and it would be peculiar, but everyone would agree it was smarter. It's not about the college thing. It's about the fact that he has not had a track record of success or experience that would allow him to have this job, which again leads you back to his proximity to Ishbia. It's impossible not to draw that line. And so Tom Habstro, longtime ESPN NBA insider and current Yahoo Sports writer and podcaster, had a very similar take based on his initial impressions of this hire too.
Mat Ishbia got a yes man. He got a guy that goes way back with the Michigan State Tom Izzo tree, back when he was playing, when he won a championship, Matt Ishbia as a walk-on. Who was the assistant coach under Tom Izzo? It was Gregory, right? So when you're looking at why this move was made, I think it has everything to do with Mat Ishbia and him wanting to meddle on all the decisions and have a guy who would say, yeah, whatever you want, sir.
Obviously, Habstro doesn't know that. None of us know that for certain. But the fact that that is so many people's assumption here, Ben, I mean, it just, like, I think where we should close if we're talking about the reaction to this, because that is a national NBA-focused person rather than some of the more local or collegiate reactions that we went through a minute ago. Are other teams going to be, like, laughing at the Suns? Like, imagine getting a call from the Suns right now, and we know how much business is on the table for them this summer. Teams are going to look at this situation and think, man, can we take advantage of the Suns? What a joke of a franchise this is. And if you think the Suns are going to have leverage or really be on top of every single thing, I don't know how you could believe that when the media reaction is so strong, basically mocking the Suns and Mat Ishbia.
When it comes to making any move, head coach, front office, GM, a player, a signing, I think your first thought should be, or like when you're firing or letting go of someone, your first thought should always be, or at least near to the top of, hey, what do my rivals think? What do other NBA teams think? It's the first thing I brought up on Wednesday was like, what are the Warriors thinking? Maybe we should call them back up for Kevin Durant. We might get a steal. This guy is inexperienced, or worse. He feels like he has to make a name for himself. He holds out really long for a deal because he feels like he can't trust anyone because they're all trying to get the best out of him. And then ultimately, at the end of the day, he gets less than you bargained for because everyone's like, listen, man, the free agency stuff is over. Giannis is off the books. This is what I have to give you.
Yeah, it's like, go talk
really
to another team. Impress me. Go get a better offer. I dare you, right? And it's like, if it does end up being that Ishbia is either more involved or at the very least doesn't take the step back that we hoped he might, Ishbia's gotten fleeced. We don't even have to imagine the idea of the Suns getting bad trades. The Blazers stole Toumani Camara in a trade where they were already winning the Lillard deal. They got Camara from the freaking third team out of nowhere. They got the Wizards got a bunch of stuff for a player who had the worst contract in the NBA. Like, we don't even have to guess about it, because if this is Ishbia still being incredibly at the lead, then we already know that's what happens. The Suns get the raw side of a lot of trades. It's been the case for 18 months, 2 years since Ishbia took the team over. It's going to continue to happen if it's a yes man in that position. But let's talk about some of the business that is on the table, starting with Booker and Durant coming up next. First, today's show brought to you by BetterHelp. The world has made a lot of progress when it comes to mental health, but there's still a long way to go. Too many people still avoid therapy because they're afraid of being judged. But the truth is, taking care of your mental health should be just as normal as going to the gym or eating healthy food. This Mental Health Awareness Month lets normalize getting help and encourage everyone to prioritize their well-being, because when people feel supported, families, workplaces, and entire communities are better off for it. I've told you before, I will tell you again, I have benefited from therapy, not because I had some big, huge life event go on that, scared me straight or anything like that, but just because, hey, I'm going through a little bit of a change, or I'm just getting older and my mindset's changing, and I just want to have somebody to bounce stuff off of and talk to and get a little bit of an helpful hand and an ear to listen. That can be all it is, or maybe you are going through something extreme. Of course, it'll help then as well. We're all better with help. So visit betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Keeping it rolling, the Suns, Ben, have a Kevin Durant-sized elephant in the room when it comes to the offseason. They have some sort of solution that they'd like to come to with regard to Bradley Beal. We would hope they would at least, try a trade. They have potential Allen, Royce, whatever. But at the very end of the day, this franchise, which has been true since February 2023, it revolves around the best two players, the big two. We'll cut off the big three. That's no longer the phrase. The big two. And now that basically means Booker and whatever they get for Durant. And, I mean, I didn't play it because we didn't have, we're not going to play a whole segment of another podcast. But later in that O'Connor-Habstro discussion, Ben, they were talking about, like, you can't shut the door on this Booker possibility based on how chaotic this hire would seem to indicate the Suns still are. So, with all of that swirling around, how do you see this hire affecting the very top of this roster and what happens going forward?
There's no way Devin Booker had a say in this. And that frustrates me because I'm not saying he should have a say, but like maybe put him in a meeting with the guy beforehand, see what Booker thinks about him. You don't let him hire him, but just see what he thinks. Let him get a grip of his personality and where he wants to go. Let that guy sell Devin Booker on what his vision would be for this team.
Well, if he's worked here, they've met. This wasn't an external guy that Ishbia brought in from directly Michigan State or something. He knows him, especially now that we know, reportedly, Gregory had been around the team since 2023, apparently. I mean, it's not a foreign person to Book.
No, sure, and that's a really good point to make. I probably should have prefaced that at first. But what I mean is, like, let him sell Booker on his vision and let Booker, if Booker's on board with that, okay, it must have been a really good vision. I don't believe that that's the case because I think Booker would be smarter than that. Kevin Durant, why the hell would he want to stay here? Like any chance of you keeping Durant around? I mean, I don't get it, man. If anything, I'm KD, and I feel like my chances worked out for the next team to win a championship with me because now I feel like teams would be able to get me for less. And if that's the case, you're hoping out the opposing team who will be able to get other things around you with the things that they should have spent on you. So the Devin Booker thing, though, them saying that you can't close the door on that, why would you? I would argue that the Suns were never like just utterly dysfunctional towards the start of Booker's prime. There were maybe some question marks. Obviously, Sarver had some issues, but towards the bubble year and on, the Suns weren't dysfunctional. And now I feel like at this point, the Suns are seen as dysfunctional.
Yeah, because Sarver finally took a step back. Right?
Exactly. And open and was willing and was very vocal. I remember this, going on shows, being open about opening up the checkbook. And you're right, taking a step back. If I'm Booker, man, I mean, how much loyalty could you have towards a team? I don't want to go towards that down that route.
Yeah,
but still.
I don't know. I think the big question, in addition to, yeah, I would agree that I doubt Booker. This would unlikely be his handpicked guy. I think we can say that. What reason or relationship would they really have had? And I think if they did have one, that would have been leading the reporting much more than, oh, he really liked Ryan Dunn. If this was Brian Gregory is really close with Devin Booker, I would imagine we would have heard that by now too. But the bigger question, I think, is what is the state of Book and Ishbia's relationship? What is that like, right? We've never really heard, I asked Ishbia a question about Booker because his comments about identity and all that type of stuff were very similar at that press conference to Book's comments in a few different instances down the stretch of the season as their playoff hopes dwindled. And he talked a lot about, we need to get back to basics. I'm going to take on the lead of building a culture and an identity here. And I asked Ishbia, are you saying these things to us because you either heard them from Book or have talked to Book about this? And he kind of sidestepped the question, which I interpreted to be, no, I'm not doing it because of that. It's not to me saying they have a bad relationship because of that. I'm just saying I don't think we can say that they're two peas in a pod, fully aligned and in lockstep about the overall direction. It feels like the only thing they've said that's in 100% lockstep is that both of their expectations are that Book is going to be on the team next year. Beyond that, I'm not sure if they see everything the same way. And that needs to iron itself out, no matter who's technically the GM or the head coach or what the direction is of the KD trade. Those guys just need to at least trust one another and be bought into the same general overarching plan going forward. And this tells me I don't know if that's the case.
Do you think this hurts or helps Devin Booker's longevity here long term in terms of like him being here, obviously?
I don't think it so specifically affects it, other than the fact that I just think chaos and turmoil are bad. And those things tend to lead to the best players wanting to be out the door. But I don't think it's like I don't see a 1-to-1, I guess.
Sure. When does it start to affect it?
If they botch the Durant trade and don't show him a roster and a situation that he thinks can turn around quickly enough to be championship competitive again in the near future, which was still the rubric I would have told you no matter who the heck they hired. But this just makes me think it's less likely that they'll do that. So that's why I think it's a problem.
So if they don't do that and combine it, like if the Suns got a really respected guy, but they ended up just getting less for Kevin Durant because his value is not as high, he's 36, whatever. You and I would still say, well, give Dave Griffin a chance to see his vision through, and I think Booker could buy that too. But combine this with the fact that we already see this guy is incompetent and not qualified for this job, and then they could botch the Kevin Durant trade. Do you think that could also push forward this season, this offseason, that Booker would be like, all right, I can't do this. Like, I can't do this. Do you think that could happen this offseason? Or do you think it would have to be another year?
I would tend to think that he is already in his head committed to seeing this season through because, just based on history, right? Like the rumblings and the momentum toward asking out of a player that good, it kind of starts right after the season. You know what I mean? And like, if we're talking about that, the thing that could push him over the edge would have to be like botching the Durant trade or some of these moves. Well, by that point, you're in mid-July. And a lot of stuff has already happened. So at that point, if I'm a player, even if I'm uncomfortable and not fully sold on what's going on around me, I'm also setting myself up for a bad situation on the back end of the trade, wherever I end up, because I'm forcing my hand late in the offseason when there's just not a lot of dominoes to go down anymore, if that makes sense, right? Like, you don't ask out in September because then a bunch of teams who might have wanted you already made their moves. It's just kind of like logistics, really.
Well, the reason why I worry about that is because if it goes bad, Kevin Durant, and gets moved in July, teams maybe still can't gear up what they want to give for Devin Booker because the draft has already gone over and Booker has just been like, this isn't working out. I would agree with you that he would see it through for one season. But next year, man, I think we're really talking about moving on from Booker because I can't trust the front office right now. They can prove to me they can. Maybe this head coach, I'm really into it, and that's an accolade for this front office. But as of right now, like I don't have anything to base this off of. I just have what they've given me. So that's all I can react to. So I worry about it for next year, but maybe not so much this year. I think you're right.
The other big piece of information that we've gotten since we last recorded is, according to John Gambadoro, that this front office, I should say, will be less collaborative, less voices in the room as a result of Gregory being promoted. Josh Bartlestein will remain, potentially be sidelined when it comes to basketball, and there could be a more cohesive vision. We'll react next. First, today's show brought to you by Monarch Money. Do you ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Well, we all have. Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it can be easy to lose track. But that's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over all your finances. Monarch Money is not just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. The best thing about Monarch Money is the all-in-one convenience, because, look, a lot of us have places we manage these things, whether that's just your banking app, whether that's your investment portfolio, and maybe you got a manager or an accountant, and then you got some notepads and some spreadsheets and this and that in your house. Well, that's not efficient. That's not really smart. That's not the best way to achieve your goals, but Monarch Money puts it all in one place for you. So take control of your finances today with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. All right, Ben, let's close it out. So we didn't mention this at all on our Friday show, that Josh Bartlestein, it was implied, because we didn't say he got fired, but he's here still. He survived this whole shuffle, and I think we can start there. You and I have been pretty aligned on this, I would say, where it bothers us that he is so involved, but I don't think we put all the blame on him. And at the end of the day, I don't think it's crazy that he could keep his job, but I would still believe that he's less involved when it comes to making trades and free agent signings and all of those sorts of things. Did I miss anything there?
No, I agree with you. Like, people know my gripe with Josh Bartlestein. I'm not going to rehash it every time it comes up here, but fine, man. Be the CEO. Get your Nepo baby check. Like, go for it. I don't care. That's fine. Cut some deals with MasterCard. Stop messing around with the front office and meddling with players. But my issue is this. What trust do I have in the front office?
Exactly.
From anything that they've told me, that he is actually going to do this role. That he's not.
That's exactly what I was going to say, right? It's like the first time we see in some report that we read or hear that he was in a meeting, that he made a call, I'm off it, and I'm mad again. I'm back to square one.
He's in the draft room. He's talking to the guys when they draft him, like any of that stuff. If the Suns had any goodwill stocked up with them in this new ownership and regime that's obviously been here for 2.5 years now, I would be like, fine, that's okay. Go cut your checks to MasterCard, with Visa, with PayPal, whatever. I don't trust them to actually pull through with that. And if they think that it's going to stay in-house, that if he is still helping out with things, it's going to get out, and they are setting themselves up for disaster than just letting the guy go and letting his dad go get him another job somewhere else. Like, that's where I feel with that. And there's no goodwill there. And I'll let you get to the front office collab stuff, but sure, if that's what he's actually doing, then yes.
Well, yeah, that part of it is a piece of the collaboration concept, right? Because when you hear somebody like Gambo talk about it, the previous setup, part of, I think, why there was so many voices in the room is because Ishbia never fully trusted James, and that makes sense to a degree. He didn't hire him, and he gave it a go, having Jones, who had built a finals team and everything else, continue to run things. And I understand the idea that if you didn't make that hire, you maybe have a little piece of you that always wants to give another piece of opinion or anything else. And so if Bartlestein's less involved and Gregory is somebody that Ishbia trusts, I don't hate that general concept. Like, I want to be clear about that. The idea of Ishbia liking somebody isn't just by itself a problem. It's the combination of Gregory's lack of resume and the fact that, you know what I mean, it's Ishbia. Because you know who has even less qualification to be the GM of the Suns than Brian Gregory? Mat Ishbia. So that's part of the problem, is if it was somebody like a Bob Myers, an experienced person that Ishbia trusted, I would buy it, and I would have no problem with there only being one voice in the room. In this case, I worry that one voice in the room might just be Ishbia. But here's the other thing, and I don't have a great take from here, but it's just been something I've wanted to talk about for a while. Because we talk about this new owner syndrome, Ben, and I think it's easy to almost lump everybody in together. Ishbia is unique in his, especially now that he's hired Gregory, his complete burning to the ground of the front office and elevation of his own voice and yes men type of voices. Like Mark Cuban's the one everybody uses. Mark Cuban left Don Nelson Sr. and Don Nelson Jr. in prominent roles with the organization when he took over up until 3 years ago. those guys were still around. He had experienced coaches like Rick Carlisle around all the time. The Jazz, that guy takes over, he hires Danny Ainge. We don't ever hear about the Jazz owner doing stuff. Like, I'm sure he's around. He's close with Dwayne Wade. I'm sure he thinks of himself as a hotshot dude just like Ishbia, but we don't really hear about it. The Nets, we know that the size are hands-on. Like, they were very closely involved with the KD situation and everything else, but they hired Sean Marks, who was very qualified, and he's been there ever since. On down the line, the Rockets, Tillman Fertitta bought the team. There was a little bit of a mess at the beginning, but basically since they traded James Harden, they've had the same brain trust in place, and they've rebuilt things, and they're on their way up. Like, it's not actually normal for this type of situation to happen. And I don't think the idea of, oh, there's one voice in the room, that's not enough to convince me, because these other people have one voice in the room, but it's a much more stable, believable, in my opinion, track record for success than whatever the Suns are currently doing. I can't get behind the idea that just because there's more alignment and less people chattering about it, that is inherently a good thing. I still come back to, I'm worried about it.
Yeah, I believe in leadership and all the things you said. Like, I echo all that. I believe in leadership. I believe in strong leaders. And most importantly, in 90% of cases, I do believe in one figure running the show with other people around to check and balance them and give them ideas. But man, there's a reason there's one teacher in a classroom. There's a reason why there's one president of the United States. Like, it just becomes a lot of cooks in the kitchen when there's too many people who feel like they're their head honcho saying what they feel is right. And that's why I feel like with James Jones moving to the senior advisory role, like, part of me is like, yeah, I do think he was just relieved to just be out of that and having to toggle what Ishbia wanted and toggle what Bartlestein wanted. I hope it's just Brian Gregory. And yeah, of course, like, getting some say from ownership on what he can and can't do in terms of like paying a player, and like, those are just normal ownership things. But I hope we can just hold one guy accountable instead of question marks of there being, I don't know, Brendon, was this Ishbia? I don't know. Is Bartlestein still walking in there? And I feel like we're never going to truly know who made what move, because again, we just can't trust this front office. So everything you said, and a part of like,
Yeah.
I wish that they just had that.
But my point is, it has to be the right one voice.
Of course.
And
I'm
whether
just saying,
it's,
I hope
and
it
whether
is.
it's, yeah, exactly. And whether it's Gregory, ultimately that is the voice winning out, or it's truly still just Ishbia, I don't believe in that voice, even if it's better to have one, right? Like, that's kind of where I'm coming from. It's like, again, if that idea of, hey, less cooks in the kitchen, Bartlestein stepping away, whatever, this will be better. If that report had come out after Myers or Griffin or somebody from another successful front office had been hired, I would have been like, awesome. I believe in that concept. But I don't care about that type of report when the person who it's going to be the voice of is unqualified and whatever. So that it's just, I wanted to point out that it doesn't have to be like this when there's a new owner. Plenty of owners have done exactly what we're asking Mat Ishbia to do.
And it's almost been a little bit of a, I'll let us close here in a second, but it's been a little bit of a slow burn. Like, how long it took to get rid of James Jones, but surely and slowly he has burned the front office to the ground and brought in his own guys. And again, and
made it a less desirable job to take in the process, right? Imagine if you had done a hire in 2023 when you just got Kevin Durant, the whole world's your oyster. How many people would have been lining up to take this job? He's selling low on his own GM job, basically.
And that's a really good point to make too. And I just want to, again, echo what you say of like, I don't believe anyone in the front. I don't trust Ishbia to do the right move. Gregory, Jones, Bartlestein, none of them. But at least I want to be able to hold one person accountable so I'm not guessing who I could go after. Like, I hope I can just hold Gregory accountable, and hopefully he makes the right moves. But again, we'll see, man. Well, I reserve the right to change my mind, but I don't feel great about it.
That will wrap us up. Hit follow or subscribe if you have not already. We will be here for you all week with the latest as the Suns coaching search heats up and we hear more concrete things about what is coming next for this roster and beyond now that somebody is in this position for better or worse. Enjoy your Monday, folks. We'll talk to you next time.